Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Now that we've concluded the second section of consolidation and maintenance of power, it's time for us to now move on to the third and final part, aims and results of policies. So, as a refresher, the next subsequent videos after this are all going to be focused on the inner workings of Mao's government, how he implemented certain policies, how he implemented certain laws and rules that affected multiple facets of society, multiple aspects of society. So we're looking at how he affected the economy. What were some of the economy policies? What he was trying to achieve and what actually happened. Political. How did he change the political sphere? Cultural. Did he do anything to shift culture? Did he impact anything socially? Did he pass any sort of policies that affected the way people interacted and discussed and worked together? Next is the impact of policies on women and minorities. We're going to see that Mao is going to have the opposite effect of what Hitler did in terms of women, and a very similar effect in terms of minorities, except it's going to be more of a different group. Now, the last point is authoritarian control and to the extent it was achieved. The thing that's really, really interesting about Mao is, as we talked about in the previous videos, Mao kind of came and went in his government, in his the way he conducted himself and his power in society. And a lot of the reason why he was doing that is the impacts of these policies. That Mao would come in, pass a particular policy, or try to enact a particular policy, and it would have dire consequences. It would have some very interesting effects where they weren't necessarily the greatest. Because although Mao thought himself as a very brilliant individual, and although the people of China saw him as a very brilliant individual, a lot of his policies had glaring issues that these issues could have been resolved or could have been avoided if Mao shared the spotlight with somebody, if Mao listened to advisors and was open to feedback on a lot of his policies. But instead, it resulted in mass death, mass violence, mass destruction. To the point that about halfway through him in power, Mao decides now's the time to break my country. So when he's leading, and after having a couple failures, after having a couple people question him, after having a couple of difficult times, Mao decides, all right, I'm going to enact a policy that's going to impact political, cultural, social, women, and minorities. I'm going to do one policy that's going to affect all of these, and it's going to shatter my country. It's going to destroy large parts of my country that are still felt today. Because remember, he passes away, he dies in 76. So Mao is in power until then. And so we see a lot of interesting, lasting effects that Mao creates while we struggle to understand how he was able to do this, how he was able to get away with it in some cases. And we're going to see that some of the things that Mao does, or some of the results of these policies, are horrific, are interesting for the fact that no one intervened internationally to help them. And a lot of that comes down to communism. A lot of that comes down to the Cold War and the priorities of the world. But it does get a very interesting dynamic of just how far Mao is willing to go in these policies to destroy his country to an extent. So please make sure to be aware, and a lot of the videos, a lot of the examples we're going to be talking about, some are going to be chronological, not all. We're going to bounce in between because, again, we're following when Mao came into government, and then left, and then came back, and then left. So, unfortunately, we have to bounce around just like he did.